It all started on a quiet Tuesday morning in our peaceful neighborhood. It's a kind of place where you'd expect birds chirping louder than drama. But that calm got shattered the moment Karen from the HOA strutted down the block, clipboard in hand, looking for her next violation. You know the type always policing lawns, trash bins, and where you park, as if she's got a personal vendetta against anyone enjoying their own property. Well, today, her target was a pickup truck parked right outside a modest brick house near the corner. It wasn't just any truck, it belonged to the county sheriff. Fresh off a long shift, he had just parked it in front of his own home, hoping to get a few hours of peace. But before he could even take his boots off, Karen marched right up and slapped one of her infamous HOA violation stickers right on his windshield. What she didn't know was that the sheriff saw it happen from his living room window. He stepped outside, calm but firm, while Karen started going off about zoning restrictions and community image. She had no clue who she was talking to, just another rule breaker in her eyes. But the look on her face when he introduced himself as the county sheriff, priceless. You could almost hear the gears in her head grinding to a stop. The best part? That wasn't even the moment she truly regretted it, because exactly 3 minutes later, something happened that turned the entire situation upside down, made everyone in the neighborhood stop and stare. You're not going to believe what the sheriff did next. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. It's a moment no one saw coming, especially not Karen. Karen stood frozen, still gripping her clipboard like it was some kind of badge of authority. Her eyes darted from the sheriff to his truck, as if she could somehow erase the sticker she'd just slapped on it. You could almost see the realization hitting her. This wasn't just another homeowner she could push around. This was the guy whose name was literally on the side of that yellow patrol truck parked across town. The same sheriff who shows up when things get serious. And now she had just accused him of violating her idea of neighborhood decorum. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. He didn't even move closer. He just stood there with that calm, steady look you'd expect from someone who's seen far worse. Then an angry HOA rep. "Ma'am," he said plainly, "you just marked a government vehicle. That's not only unnecessary, could actually be considered tampering." Karen blinked. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came out at this point. A few neighbors had started peeking through windows. One guy across the street even stepped onto his porch with a cup of coffee in hand, watching like it was front row. Entertainment. Everyone knew Karen. Most had been on the receiving end of her violation warnings: too many trash bins out, mailbox too faded, even grass 2 inches too high. But this was new. The sheriff didn't back down. He gestured toward the violation sticker with a slight nod, as if to give her a chance to explain. But Karen just stammered something about community guidelines and setting an example. The longer the silence dragged out, the more uncomfortable she looked. But the real twist hadn't hit yet. Something was already in motion, something Karen never saw coming. And it all started just moments before she slapped that sticker on his windshield. Just minutes before. Karen made her big mistake. The sheriff had been on a call with the county office. Turns out, he was helping coordinate a neighborhood safety program, something the HOA had been dragging their feet on for months. Ironically, he was trying to make the area safer and more organized, the very thing Karen always claimed to care about. But instead of working with him, she was out here slapping warning labels on law enforcement vehicles like she was starring in her own reality show. Meanwhile, inside the sheriff's house, his teenage daughter was watching everything unfold from the front window. She knew all about Karen. Everyone did. A few weeks back, Karen had embarrassed her mom at the HOA meeting, calling her out for having outdated shutters on the house. That argument led to her mom walking out mid-meeting and never going back. So, for the sheriff's family, this wasn't just some random parking complaint. was personal. Out on the street, Karen tried to regain control. She flipped to a page on her clipboard and pointed out a line in the HOA rulebook about commercial vehicles not being allowed to park overnight. "This is a patrol vehicle," the sheriff said, barely holding back a chuckle. "Not a taco truck." His voice was calm but firm enough to make her backpedal a bit. Still, she didn't apologize. Instead, she turned it around, accusing him of setting a bad example for others. From the sidewalk, more neighbors began to gather. One of them, Mr. Thompson, a retired Marine, crossed his arms and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Funny how the HOA never fined her when her dog tore up my garden." The crowd murmured. It wasn't just about the sticker anymore. It was everything Karen had been getting away with until now. Karen's face turned red. Whether from the heat or the attention, no one could tell. She adjusted her jacket and looked around at the small but growing crowd. Her grip tightened on that clipboard like it was the last bit of control she had. The sheriff didn't move. He didn't need to. The silence around him was louder than anything she could say. Everyone was waiting, watching what she'd do next. You could feel the tension stretching tighter by the second. Then she did what she always did, deflected. "This isn't personal," she snapped, trying to regain control. "It's about following rules. If we make exceptions, this place turns into a parking lot." But no one nodded in agreement. Not this time. Even the usually quiet neighbors who avoided conflict were now leaning on fences. Arms crossed, silently siding with the sheriff behind them. Someone pulled out a phone and began recording. Not in a viral video kind of way, but like they wanted. Proof, Karen noticed, and for a split second her confidence cracked. Her eyes darted between the phone, the sheriff, and the patrol truck. Her voice started to tremble. "I'm just doing my job," she mumbled. The sheriff took a slow breath, his eyes scanning the sticker on the windshield. "Do you even know what that sticker means legally? Or are you just putting them on whatever bothers you today?" His words cut deeper than if he'd raised his voice. The crowd shifted, murmurs rising like a wave. Then something unexpected happened. A second patrol vehicle turned the corner, headlights on. Karen stiffened. Two more uniformed officers stepped out, one of them from the County Code Enforcement Department. The timing wasn't random. The sheriff had already made a call before. Stepping outside. Karen just didn't know it yet. The moment those second officers stepped out, the energy on the street shifted. Karen's clipboard dipped slightly, her confidence shrinking with every slow step they took toward the scene. The officer from Code Enforcement held a small file in his hand, clearly not just passing by. The crowd leaned in, sensing something big was about to drop. Karen tried to speak first, hoping to steer things her way. "Officers, I was just addressing a vehicle violation under HOA Regulation Code section," but the code officer held up his hand. "Ma'am, we're not here." About his truck, he paused, then glanced at the sheriff. "We're here about yours." Karen blinked. "My? What?" she asked, voice cracking. He flipped open the file. "We received multiple complaints about unapproved renovations and misuse of HOA funds. And after reviewing the submitted evidence, there's probable cause to open an investigation." The crowd gasped. Someone in the back let out a quiet whistle. Karen's face went pale. Apparently, while Karen had been handing out citations for faded mailboxes and cracked sidewalks, she had been quietly bypassing approval processes for her own backyard expansion, complete with a patio cover and outdoor kitchen no one remembered voting on. To make matters worse, the sheriff's earlier phone call wasn't just about a safety program. It was about confirming a tip that had come in, anonymously. Karen stumbled back a step, nearly dropping her clipboard. Her usual sharp tone was gone. "This is a misunderstanding," she whispered, eyes darting around the crowd. But no one stepped in to support her. Not this time. The sheriff stayed quiet, letting it all unfold. This wasn't just about a sticker anymore. This was about someone who thought the rules didn't apply to her until they suddenly did. And things were far from over. Karen's lips trembled as she clutched her clipboard tighter, trying to gather herself. "You can't just accuse me without proof," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. But the code enforcement officer calmly held out a thick envelope. "Actually, we can. These are aerial photos from last month, taken during routine inspections. Your new patio, stone fire pit, and covered pergola. None of it has been submitted for HOA or county approval." The neighbors murmured again, louder this time. A few exchanged looks, some smug, some shocked. The sheriff finally stepped forward, his voice steady. "Karen, it's not about the patio. It's the double standard. You've been threatening families over fence heights while breaking every rule behind closed doors." His words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Karen looked around, searching for an ally. But every door and porch that once supported her was silent now. Then came the twist no one expected. From the back of the crowd, Mrs. Parker, an older woman known for keeping to herself, stepped forward, holding a flash drive. "I've been documenting things for a while," she said quietly. "Emails, approvals made without votes, even." In the days that followed, things changed around the neighborhood. Karen was temporarily suspended from the HOA board pending a full investigation. And neighbors who had once stayed quiet finally started speaking up. Old violations were reviewed and thrown out. People started sharing their own stories, how they'd been fined for kids' bikes left on the lawn, or for paint that was too bright. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt less tense. The sheriff never gloated. He didn't need to. He quietly peeled the violation sticker off his truck, tossed it in the trash, and got back to doing what he always did, serving the community with fairness and respect. Mrs. Parker, who many had underestimated, was invited to help oversee a new HOA transparency committee. Turns out, she had a knack for organizing things the right way. And people actually listened when she spoke. Karen's patio was eventually cited, and she was ordered to either remove it or bring it up to code legally. Whether she stayed in the neighborhood or not was still up in the air, but her grip on everyone had definitely loosened. And while the sheriff never said it outright, folks knew that his quiet stand had made a loud difference. At the end of it all, it wasn't about a sticker. It was about fairness, accountability, and standing up when enough was enough. Even in a peaceful-looking neighborhood, power unchecked can turn ugly, but it can also be put back in place with truth and patience. Sometimes the biggest shift happens not with shouting, but when people decide they're done being pushed around, and when justice finally shows up in uniform and boots. Well, not even a clipboard can stop that.